there was a story that you told on the You Are Not So Smart podcast about the orange and the
Hmm.
girls. I wonder if you might go into that story for
Sure.
this
So that story,
audience.
this is definitely not, this is very, very much not my story. This is like the
Okay.
classic, and it's fine. It's, but just, I don't want anyone to be like Misha Glouberman,
Right.
author of the Orange story. This is like, I think, the most classic negotiation story that gets told. The story of the Orange. The story of the Orange is this: there's two daughters, little girls, sisters. They're alone in a kitchen, and there is one orange, and they're both fighting over the orange. Each of them's like, "I want the orange. I want the orange." They have all these reasons why they want it. Their father comes in, sees them fighting, and they're giving him all these reasons. He doesn't find any of the reasons terribly compelling, and so he does the fairest thing he can think to do, which is he takes the orange, he cuts it in half, he gives half to one daughter, half to the other. Off they go. The next day, the father goes up to the first daughter, and he says, "Hey, how'd it go yesterday with the orange?" The daughter says, "Oh, how I see how what you did was fair. I wanted the orange because I wanted to make orange juice, and because I only had half the orange, I could only make half as much juice as I wanted. But it was fair." He goes up to the second daughter, and he says, "How'd it go with the orange?" And she says, "Oh, I see how what you did was fair. I wanted the orange because I wanted to bake a cake, and the recipe for the cake called for the rind, for the peel of the orange. Because I only had half the orange, I could only bake half the recipe. But I see how what you did was fair." So the tragic thing that gets overlooked is, you could divide up the orange differently. You could if you'd had a bit of a conversation about as we say in negotiation, about the underlying interests, that there might be a better solution, and that in a better solution, right, one daughter can get all the peel and one daughter can get all the pulp. And it gets sort of it's used to illustrate a few different things in negotiation. One is just this idea of what gets called positions and interests in negotiation, which is a technical use of these everyday terms. But the basic idea is that very often in negotiation, people have these positions, what they call positions in negotiation, which are these firm things that they want. But underneath that, there's reasons why they want them. And a very common occurrence is that on the surface, the positions can look sort of diametrically opposed or intractable. But if you get down to the underlying interests, you can start to begin to find sort of diagonal solutions that solve the problem in ways that wouldn't have been obvious if you didn't have that. But very often we go into negotiations just sort of thinking, well, she wants the orange, I want the orange, let's get in a fight about the orange. And people start to talk about compromise. And when people talk about compromise, is a word negotiators don't like, because compromise sort of makes it seem like, well, maybe we'll divide the orange 60-40, maybe 50-50 is a compromise. I wanted all the orange, you wanted all the orange, we each get half. Or we can fight, we can make it 60-40 or 75-25. But that whole conversation ignores the fact that if we actually can talk about the underlying interest, there might just be a way to actually create more value. There might be a way to solve the problem in ways that weren't obvious to us. And the claim among people who do this sort of negotiation that I teach is that those kinds of situations are very common. That lots and lots and lots and lots of situations are like that situation with the orange. Lots and lots and lots of situations. There are opportunities to create value that might not be obvious, or at the very least, opportunities to destroy value that you might want to avoid.
Mm-hmm.
That's the story. You
Well,
found
yeah,
that story compelling?
I did find that.
Why would it?
Yeah, I found that story very
What was
compelling.
how so?
Just because when you look at things from the outside and you're like very cut and dry and you don't take in all the variables of what we're trying to figure out, you can make these decisions that seem fair and equitable on the outside, but like you say, you end up destroying some potential
Yeah,
value there. And that
yeah,
terminology really resonated with me too, of that it's not a zero sum game, that there's value to be created or maximized and value to be destroyed, and that there's not a set there's very rarely a set amount of values, is kind of what you were
yeah.
going at there.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, and that zero sum assumption is an assumption that I think as humans, we're sort of like a little bit predisposed to that assumption.
Mm-hmm.
And then when the more things get more stressful, the more we tend to sort of fall into that zero sum assumption, and the more we tend to think about things as win lose, and think about resources as finite, and think